thank you to our 3 sponsors for supporting our podcast. Johnny Russell's Art Caterers and Milltown Pies, who offer fantastic catering services, Alexander Grace Law, who provide modern and client-led legal services, and SPE Furnishings, who offer high-quality furnishings and electrical items at fantastic prices.
He's going to be in permanent lockdown, Cobus. He's liked it.
He's been in lockdown for 10 years, hasn't he?
To be fair, I'm not much different, Blaze. I quite enjoy avoiding people. So
Yeah, I know, Pete, but you get away with it being, again, one step ahead of Joe, don't you?
Ordered! Send more house to save the house! Come on, the house!
Welcome back to Housecast, and this is part 2 of the 2014 Championship winning year, where we discuss our games and different things that happened with Cobus Pienaar, Chris Bleazard, Paddy Martin, and me, Joe Martin, as host. We return just as we're discussing 3 important games that came up in the middle of the season that didn't quite go our way.
Blaze, have you seen Cobus's chair?
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's cool.
You'll have to have one, Blez, but with just one big Lowerhouse shirt.
Yeah.
There's 3 games in that period that I want to sort of discuss that aren't league games, actually. So the first one is the T20 against Colne, which was rain affected. Blez didn't play.
I didn't play either.
I think you were in Cyprus, P.
University.
Yeah, so it was left up to me and Cobus. So that T20 game against Colne was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. So we needed to win to go through, and we needed to win quite handsomely, I think.
That's when Stanley's calculator just went into the wrong mode, weren't it? Stanley had us having to win off 2.3 overs, something like that, whatever they got into.
He'd gone into trigonometry for some reason.
Sin cos tan.
He'd soccer-toed it and it was just a nightmare.
So it was rain affected, 16 over game. Somehow, because this hadn't happened all season, they managed to get 166 off 16 overs. Shadley had smashed it. He'd hit some really clean balls. I mean, I can't remember people bowling particularly bad, but the ball was wet.
Wet. Yeah.
The outfield was wet. And I can remember Shadley arguing with Chaz. I can't really remember what it was about, but they were arguing about but they were definitely arguing. And we sat in the changing rooms a little bit disheartened because we thought, well, we can't go through now. And Cobus just said, right, well, we'll have to chase it off 10 overs. Stanley worked out that we needed to chase it off 10.4 overs or something like that. 10.2 overs. We need to chase 166 off 10.2 overs, and Cobus said, right, well, we'll just chase it then. So Cobus and Johnny strode out, and the first ball was bowled by Matt Clark, or...
Shadley, wasn't it Shadley?
Can't remember, it might have been Shadley.
Shadley bowled the first ball from the T end, yeah.
Yeah, and Cobus hit the ball the hardest I've ever seen anybody hit it. He smashed it, went just like rocked on the back foot and just smashed it straight back past the stumps towards the sight screen. And I looked at, I think I was sat next to Ferg, and I looked at Ferg and sort of went, he seems a bit mad. And from there, it was utter carnage. Literally, I can't remember how many balls it was, Cobb, but it was definitely less than 20 for you to get to 60. Johnny the same.
I think what you rightly said is they managed to get to 160, and nobody of us bowled badly. And when we did the calculations on the manager's calculator there before it bombed out, we had some sort of idea that we need to get the bonus point. And in my head, and I think Frank Entwistle was important here, Frankie's chat about these finals, I knew in the back of my head that if we get to it, Lowerhouse will host the 2020 final. And listening and seeing how the club operates with these sort of things, that making it a proper event, it was massively for me to get us into that final. I remember that day, that Friday, it was Friday afternoon, there was hundreds of phone calls about games getting called off and whatever. And we were just lucky at Cole that we were lucky to play. Nobody at our club even thought we were going to play. Some of our main spectators who always travelled with didn't even come because it was just highly unlikely that we were going to play, and we managed to get a game in. And going back to the belief, as you rightly said, nobody bowled badly and they managed to get to 160. And I remember saying that in the change room and said, we just got to chase whatever we needed. There's nothing, we can't not have a go at it and potentially get it right. And I remember walking out, and when that first ball went for a boundary, and after Shadley were hitting and cleanly, I just walked to Johnny. I said, Johnny, we got a real go. We got a real chance here. And I think the longer you batted, the more the belief came. And that was quite special, sitting back on that balcony. I remember that with our pink shirts, which is quite a great shirt. It's part of my chair also. And pulling it off. And that was just showed, like what we spoke about earlier when we got into that run. We just literally believed that season that anything is possible. And that showed that, because me and Johnny gave us a great start, but the guys who had to come in still had to score more than 10s and over to get us over the line. And every single guy who came in there and walked out there believed that he can do it. I remember Hawke also finishing it off there at the back end. Nobody sort of stopped it. We just kept going and knew what we needed to do, and we had to get it done somehow.
Matt Walker batted really well. Johnny was smashing it over walls and stuff like that. But the winning runs came off Hawke's box for 4 leg bars. When hit him on his box and went for 4 leg bars past the keeper.
Ta-da!
It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, and I think anybody that was there said that. I think Gary Hunt said it. He said, I've never seen anything like it. It was amazing. The second game's the Worsley Cup semi-final against Rottenstall. A massively disappointing day, but a semi-final nonetheless. We got 220 odd.
Which is light, isn't it? Light, isn't it, that?
Very much so. We'd just gone into a period of nice weather as well, Blez. So the wickets were pretty good. You know, it wasn't a bad wicket. And 224 was light.
I can remember thinking we were at least 30 below where we should have got with our batting side. Not that we didn't think we were going to win, but I just remember thinking it's a bit light. Is that it's not what I was expecting anyway. I expected more than that.
Yeah, I mean Ben got 70 odd.
Did Matt get some that day?
No, I think Matt got some in the league.
There was somebody batting with Ben, weren't they? And they got out almost like one ball after another. I can't remember who was batting.
Chaz got 30 odd.
Yeah, when we were just ready to put did Riley actually come on to bowl? Did Riley get somebody out?
Yeah, he got 4 wickets that day.
Yeah,
4 for 40 off 6.
We were just about to put the foot down on the accelerator, and they both, I don't know whether they both got out to Riley, but they were both out within.
Yeah, they did, bless.
Yeah, both were out within a couple of balls. Not that you're blaming anybody, and then we lost another couple of wickets, and it just sort of like, took the momentum from under our feet. We're probably gonna talk about the bowling and being so disappointed that in our bowling, but really, I think it was our batting that was 30-40 short on that sort of wicket that made it harder work for our bowlers and made it harder to captain. In terms of looking at our bowlers and where we were putting them.
I mean, you were out to a storming catch, Bless, if you can remember. It was like a full-length horizontal diving catch. Yeah. And you were walking off in amazement, like, what on earth just happened? Yeah. Because I don't think you weren't out. There were still some overs left when you were out.
Yeah.
Pat, you hit a big 6 that day as well.
Yeah, one of many in my career, I think that.
Certainly at Rottenstall.
Is that when who was the Burnley footballer? He had to throw it back from his apartment.
Danny Ings.
Danny Ings, that's it, yeah.
Cobus' favourite song.
It's quite a good song.
Do you remember anything about the batting, Cobus?
I can't remember much about the batting, to be honest. I just always remember that Roscoe, the left-arm spinner of Rottenstall, was always quite hard to get away. I think he was a very clever bowler. If you sit on the side, you think you can manipulate him and you can get under him. And I think he's quite skillful. There's a reason why he got over 1,000 Lancashire League wickets. And that sort of showed against us. He was quite effective against us every single time. I think that's also altered us a bit in terms of not getting enough runs. But to be honest with you, I think we'll get to that now. I think our bowling in that that day was quite a low point for me after we had such a good run. Personally, I think Cobus Martin played very well. But that wicket, I think we just sort of missed our lens, and obviously we just feeded him in terms of his strengths, and he played a great innings, and he was pumped up. And I think me personally, it was a bit of a low point when you learn a lot of lessons as a cricketer. And for me there to get involved, I think me getting involved with him that day sort of put a fire on him and got the better out of him. And that's how you learn, for me, if you just could have...
He'd sort of like, once, he was their mainstay. He got their first almost 130 runs. He was 80, wasn't he?
Mm.
But the rest weren't getting any, were they, at that stage? He wasn't as though he took the game away from us in the sense that he got 80 and they were 170, so the less needed to limp over. There was still, I don't know, because we don't have when he was out, but I think he was out. They still needed over 100 to win. And you just looked at the back end of their side after we got the 1, 2, 3, 4 out. We still thought we're still in with a good chance of winning this. And it was the innings after that sort of like were more annoying to me than his 80, because he's a good player, irrespective. He is a good player.
I mean, Pat, you bowled very well that day. You're 2 for 21 off 10.
Yeah, I would maintain that's the best I've ever bowled for Lowerhouse.
Yeah.
Well, not that I've played for anyone else. Yeah, best I'd ever bowled that day.
Help me if I'm wrong, but I think I've bowled most of my overs up front when Cook batting. I did a lot of overs at the back end. I remember that.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. You might have bowled 1 or 2 at the back end, but we just thought we could get him out. We were still taking wickets. Paddy had got Peltzer out.
Yeah.
I think I got Payne, not Peltzer.
Payne, sorry. Maz got Brett Peltzer out. And when I look at their scorecard, actually, it's very similar. It's obviously very similar to ours. They chased it down in the last over, but one of their batters pushed on and got 60-odd and batted with Cobus Martin, and a guy batting at 9 got 30.
Yeah.
And that essentially put them over the line. I will say that's the angriest I've ever seen you, Cobus, that day.
I think angry is one word, but I think more disappointed because I don't think they were a better side than us. For me, it was a bit of a low point that day. I remember Lucinda was over and we had a great crowd there when we entered Rottenstall, and it was a big thing for us after the good cricket we played. And I think the disappointment was more the right word than angry, because of I thought we let ourselves down in terms of the competition, how we played and how well we played leading up to that. So it was more disappointing than anything else.
Bitterly disappointing, really.
I think it was probably since 2012, it was probably our best chance of winning that.
Yeah, definitely.
Competition.
My first chance.
It wasn't your first chance, was it?
No, true, Blaze.
First chance went in selection in 2012.
Yeah, it went.
Blazer, I will warn you, I've signed a waiver that I will not discuss 2012. And then finally, to just move away from the league for the one last time, the T20 final, which was another bitterly disappointing game. We got to the final again. We'd won it the previous year. We had a fantastic game against Rami. Everything seemed to be going pretty well. I mean, we said that we wanted a final, Cobus, and we managed to get one. And I think that year, actually, we would have hosted the Worsley Cup final as well if we'd have got there. But we
ended up being against Burnley, didn't it? It would Burnley.
It would have been, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And that's when they were picking their stars.
Superstars.
Yeah. So, Cobb, we got to the final. Everything's going pretty well. They were 46 for 4. You just got their pro out, caught behind. Can you remember anything from the final? What were your initial thoughts? And as the game progressed?
I just think the whole final, we weren't really up for it for some reason. And if you look back at that season, it was against Church again, and for some reason Church sort of had our number that year. I remember that the one bowler who bowled for them, did quite well in the 2020, was quite skiddy. Remember him, Seaman?
Yeah, Basra.
A lot of guys knew where he was from at the time. And he sort of blown us away there in the middle. When we spelled there, he bowled 4 overs on the bounce, and he blown us away. And he really bowled well, but he sort of took the game away from us after we were controlling the game. But we didn't play our best cricket that day. It was a bit of a blur for me the whole day for some reason. And can't really remember why, but I remember that Basra that Seaman was the turning point in our batting innings, definitely.
What I will add, Joe, is that their guy who got I think it was Gilray and got 40 odd. He was run out by at least 8 foot, and the umpire wasn't looking and didn't give it out, and he got 40. He was only on single figures at the time.
Yeah.
And umpire give it not out, and there was just a state of shock, and then he got 40 odd, and probably took him above par because if I remember rightly, the wicket wasn't great.
No.
Was Pete? Who was the groundsman then? Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd been a tough year, hadn't it, that year with the weather?
Yeah, it'd been a real mixed bag of weather, I think. But 130, chasing 130, you know, we'd chased 160 in 10 overs. At no point in that game did I think this is going to be a tough chase. I mean, you and Johnny were opening the batting and started really well, I'd have said.
Yeah, we got off to a good start, didn't we, really?
Corby hit a massive 6 over the trees towards Sycamore Farm.
Yeah.
I think it landed in there. It was enormous. But from there, we just, as you said, Batsman came on and just halted us, really. Matt and Chaz batted well, but we never really looked like we were going to chase it after.
From the opening partnership, we got behind, didn't we? We were behind the run rate. And although Matt and Chaz were batting well, we were still pretty much 3 or 4 runs and over behind where we needed to be, which was difficult to get back on that wicket.
So a really tough day, but that meant that we could focus back on the league. The next game that I think is really important, that sort of made sure for me that we were going to win the league was Rami at home. Darren Smith had gone home, so they had engaged a high-quality first-class cricketer in Peter Trigo. Big hitter, bowls at a good pace. So we were all, obviously, when anybody like that comes, you're always talking about it. Blaze, can you remember anything from that day?
I can remember it was obviously a big game, weren't it? Because Ramsbottom were behind us, weren't they? They were second, we were top, and really, if we'd have won that game, we knew with 3 games to go, I think we needed very few points to make sure we won the league. We knew it was going to be a big game. We knew that there was a chance really of putting 1.5 hands on the championship, didn't we? If we won that game, it was a key game. It's one of those that you're not worried about because we were so far ahead. So everything was in our favour in the sense that even if we lost, we knew we were still in the box seat, so that helped. And I just remember looking forward to the game. I remember thinking we were in good form. Darren's a very useful cricketer. His way around to the umpires. He had his reputation of being very, very good bloke, and all the umpires, loved him. And when he wasn't playing, no matter who they got, unless they got, a world superstar, I thought we were in with a decent chance.
Absolutely. I mean, when they signed, there were all kinds of figures banded about for how much they'd paid for him, but a really big name for him to come into the league. And in the warm-up, Johnny was his excited self, and just kept shouting, "Peter, trees!" whilst we were middle of the warm-up.
It'd been one of those, Joe, where if they'd have signed, I don't know, let's say Kaiser Abbas in his pomp, you'd have been a bit more worried than signing Peter Trigo, because it takes a lot to come from Cobus as playing first-class cricket over in South Africa to come to Lowerhouse and deal with whatever wickets he's presented with there. It's tough to get the same for still playing first-class cricket, still playing List A cricket, to come to play in a league game on a wicket that he doesn't know a great deal about. It was I thought it was in our favour, although he's a good player. I'd have been more worried if they'd assigned a proper league professional from around the area.
Especially on a one-off game as well, Bless. It's even more difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because all it needed were exactly what happened, them to be 50 for 5 and him having all the way to the team on him. And
Corb, you had a great start that day. I think you took a wicket in the first over. You got Tom Parton out.
Yeah, Tom Parton was a good player for them that year. Got a lot of runs, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Top of the order. Him and Darren Smith were fundamental for them. And I remember they obviously signed Peter Trigo because if they were the only side who could potentially beat us. And like Brez rightly said, if we beat them, we go 1.5 hands on the trophy, which was brilliant because the other side was just too far away. It was a bit of a crunch game, and I think we stood up and we played a great cricket game that day.
There's sort of 2 things I can remember in particular about their innings. The first one was that obviously we'd had a great start and Peter Trigo had come in. Matt Walker bounced him first ball on a really slow wicket, and he just turned his head and it sort of bounced off the back of his helmet and rolled to me, and he just looked sort of bemused by the fact that that happened. The second thing, at drinks, he asked for a cup of tea. Which did make me laugh. Now, that game, Finch got him out, caught on the boundary edge by your good self, Cobus. And from there, as we had done for the rest of the year, we just steamrolled through them. They were 70 all out. They were our closest rivals. And then obviously they...
Did we knock them off easily, Joe? Did we make hard work of it?
No, we knocked it off very easily.
One down, weren't we?
I can't remember. Do you know now I think about it, I can't remember if Stan was the groundsman then.
Stan was groundsman when I was there, definitely.
I'd have thought so, because it were a bad wicket.
But do you know, but the other thing was their chairman went out to Stan and accused him of rolling the wicket too much.
Yeah, he did. Mick Everett, yeah.
Went out and said, you've been rolling it for too long. And Stan gave him his thoughts on that. And I think Peter Trigo still has sleepless nights about bowling at Finchy.
And that bouncer off, Matt.
Yeah. Just kept bowling back of a length, and Finch kept playing inside the line of it like Trescothick used to do. He batted really well, Finch.
Not deliberately, though.
And again, we were 73 for 1 off 21 overs. Game done by our 5. We were happy. And obviously that came to the back end of the season. A really tight game against Aki, where we won by 5 runs.
That was Cobus's last game?
Yeah, Cobus's last game took 5.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
were they back-to-back those games?
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, Saturday, Sunday.
Saturday, Sunday, yes.
Pat, you had a good day that day as well. Ben got 60 odd and batted well. 183 was probably about par, I would say, for that day.
Yeah, tough tracks over there, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you had a great day then, P, as well. Took 5 wickets, 5 for 44 off 13.
All left-handed?
They were all left-handed, P, yeah, that's right. Even a stumping, which is amazing. But that was such a tight game.
I didn't realise Charlie kept that day.
Good one. Such a tight game, but it was one that we had... I can't remember when we'd had such a tight game, except for probably in the cup, Blaise.
Okay, he kept him in the game, didn't he? But they were always behind, and he just didn't look to accelerate. He kept well within himself. And then, I know we won by 5 runs, but I think he hit a couple of sixes, didn't he, towards the back end to get. They needed 30 off 2 overs, didn't they? Something like that.
Yeah.
And they got within 5, but they were never really threatening. It was tight. It was. You were worried that it could change, but it didn't seem to change until, right at the end. And even then, they didn't look like they were actually good at passes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. But another great win. Took us close. We needed 7 points the next.
I was just going to say,
weekend.
Does that mean we just needed to win, didn't we, next weekend?
Yeah.
So that was
we could have tied and
a good place for Cobus to go back, knowing that it was only 1 win.
Yeah.
Corb, how did you feel leaving at that point, knowing that we'd essentially won the league, but we hadn't quite done it whilst you were there?
Yeah, I was quite sad to leave at the time, because obviously in terms of how we developed as friends and as a team, it was brilliant for me. And at that time, it was a bit emotional to leave with obviously what's up for grabs as a team. But luckily, I've signed to come back in the 2015 season earlier with David Wren and Stanley, who played a big part in me coming back for the following year. So it was always an excitement that I know I'm going to come back in 2015. But it was tough leaving. I really enjoyed it. It was great memories. And as I said, that evening, I remember, can you guys remember it? I know Blaise and you two were there when Mark Whitehead pulled out the
guitar
and Johnny with his beatbox. And those sort of things are memories that will be lasting and will stay forever. We would have come over this year on a tour, but with all these things not happening, and I know Blaise would have come to visit us this side. But things are different, and the world is in chaos. But I can't wait to drive into Lowerhouse gates again and to meet up with all the guys, because it was great memories. And if we go back through a season like this, I think we're busy for just over an hour now, whatever. But there's so many memories and so many things that actually get refreshed in our minds again, and it's special memories that I will definitely cherish.
You'd had a great season at that point, Cobus. I mean, people, when you look at your bowling stats, 68 wickets at 12, 5 wicket hauls and 4 wicket hauls. You just had an ability to bowl at a length and a line that got amateur cricketers out and bowling at the death as well. You just had a knack of getting cricketers to nick off or to bowl them. You must have been really pleased with your stats that year, I think, especially your bowling ones.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I underperformed a bit with the bat because that was my first. And I always tried to stand for as a professional to win leagues and to win trophies. That was, if I think back of my 8 years throwing, 7 of the 8 years we managed to win something. And that's what I was stand for. I was never looking at myself. And I think I was a bit of a selfless cricketer my whole career-wise in terms of getting the best for the team. Obviously, you're disappointed and underperforming because at that point in time, batting was still my first strength and my first skill. But we had to find ways to get things done. You know, we worked that year. And funny enough, my uncle Fanny, who played at Tottenham, we looked at his stats at Tottenham and my stats at Lowerhouse in the same league. And he played for South Africa, but I definitely topped him by quite a bit. So that's
Yeah, and it's a really important point to make as well, Cobus, is that, and Bleazard said it a lot, the amount of games that we bowl teams out for less than 150 or even 100 was incredible, I think. So I think that's a point to make.
So come and join us. Stand west in tight hands. Worsley Cup still gleaming. Years without a cup. Never stopped us dreaming.
Welcome to Stories with Stan.
Very back room, of course, Jez, where you had the showdown with Norman Dale. Norman Dale was the scorer and had been for quite a few years, and he was rough and tumble. Was Norman, no airs and graces, and said it how he saw it. He was a good scorer, but it was pencil, red pen, and blue pen, and it was at the time when scoring was becoming much more sophisticated with wagon wheels and people actually denoting which batsman had faced which bowler by different coloured artifacts, items, utensils. And Norman decided that he was going to use felt-tip pens to join in this modern scoring system. Some of the stick Higgy was giving Norman Dale about him having felt-tip pens in a Mexican bandolero around his chest. And unfortunately, the paper in the scorebook was so thin that by week 4, you could see the previous matches through the paper of the current game he was scoring. And it made it real difficult to look at. So you can imagine he got a bit of stick about this, and it must have bristled with him. Because we're in the bar afterwards, and Jez was only a kid at the time. You might have been 19, Jez, I don't know, but back comes the second 11. As we all do, let's have a look at the scorebook of the home game. Norman hands Jez the scorebook, and Jez says, "Bloody hell, Norman, it looks like Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat." I can't read a thing. At which point, Norman absolutely blows his stack and comes out with the old fallback comment, "If you can do any effing better, you effing do it." Unfortunately, in fact, he might have gripped Jez by the lapels, but fortunately nothing came of it. But Norman packed in shortly after that. So Jez was always referred to as the man that drove Norman Dale out of town in a great Wild West fashion.
So we go on to the game where we won the league at Todmorden. We'd got Christy Viljan as pro, who had won the league the day before.
Blackpool.
For Blackpool. And I think he'd enjoyed himself the previous evening, to say the least. I don't think. But he'd taken 100 wickets in the Northern League, and they'd got Kelly Smuts as pro as well. It was going to be a tough game to get those 7 points, but we knew that we had quite a few games that we could still do it. P, do you want to talk us through that game that you can remember? Blaze, you can come in at any point.
They batted first, did they, Joe? Got how many?
180-ish.
Yeah, 177.
177.
I think Christian got a few, and their pro got a few as well, but he was startled in the mid-30s.
By a cheeky off spinner.
Yeah, I can't remember how it were out, but I can actually.
It was caught at slip.
Massive. Yeah, but it was being aimed over cow corner. Unsurprisingly,
it was a big sort of swipe to cow corner, P.
because he'd got the double 100 ante that year.
No,
No.
The year after.
that was the year after.
But he was a sub-pro, weren't he?
Yeah.
But we knew he was quite a dangerous pro with what we'd heard about him and how he played. So I think 177 was probably below par. Probably below par, but obviously with the significance of the game, for us, it ended up being above par. Don't ever think that they got away from us when we were bowling. We didn't bowl them out. I remember that, and we were a bit disappointed by that, because obviously we needed the points. But yeah, I'd have said the score in the end was probably just below par, but above par for the type of game it was, if that makes sense.
Then we come to the batting.
We do, Les. I'd also like to point out that when Paddy said Christian batted well and their pro batted well, I think I dropped Christian maybe twice, and I dropped their pro twice as well.
And surprisingly, but they're all off me.
One of them was off Finch. So yeah, we come to the batting. Finch and Johnny opened. Finch had stolen our pro's bat. He gone back with, he just took it and hit him for a massive six, hit Kelly Smuts for a massive six, and then got his bat stuck in his pad. And he literally had no stumps left. Very similar to another player that we'll discuss later on, but for a different reason.
Just to interject, Joe, Cobus, what I seem to remember texting you at the time about Kelly Smuts, and you'd said he were a dangerous player. Did he have a bit of a reputation for that over in South Africa, or not really?
Yeah, he was a hard-hitting left-handed and bowled gentle, medium pace, but he's quite accurate in terms of where he gets the balls in areas. But from a batting point of view, he had the ability to hit the ball very hard. He's a brother, obviously, of John, as you know. And both of them came from a tennis background, so they were very good stroke makers. This is a left-hander, they tend to cross the line quite well. So that was his strength. And obviously, the year after, what he did there, it's sad a guy like him didn't play more frames in South Africa. He's sort of just on the edge where he misses out, but he's definitely a very handy figure.
To remember you saying he'd probably end up being a pretty useful league pro, which occurred the year after. So we'd got a bit of information, but not much. But he could be dangerous, and he was dangerous that day with the ball, certainly. Yeah,
I mean, he just seemed to be able to take wickets. We'd start to get going, and then he'd just take a wicket.
Yeah, him and the umpires he got 7 wickets with him that day, didn't he?
Jesus. Might have to be censored in this one.
So the batting went on. Matt Walker batted quite well, didn't he?
Matt Walker batted very well, got 60
very well.
Our pro, was caught in the slips first ball. Sav took an absolute blinding catch, which obviously it was going to be tough to chase from there. But Matt Walker batted extremely well with Hawkey. Hawkey got 30 odd and Maz got 60 odd. So P, you were batting.
I didn't get any runs, so I'm insignificant in this discussion.
Yeah, I know that, but you were out LBW.
Well,
do you think you got an inside edge on it, P?
I'd rather call it BBW, as it didn't actually hit my pad.
And then one of the funniest things I've ever seen happen was Paddy then turned around and smashed all his stumps over, and I think that they went at least 20 to 30 metres.
I don't think they went that far, Joy. Maybe just a pitch length, 22 yards, maybe, something like that.
Jeez. Well, but all 3 of them, not just one, all 3 of them. And as he walked out, he was obviously furious. He threatened to knock me out because I called him irrational. And he also had 3 stump marks on the edge of his bat.
Well, at least he was controlled when he came into the dressing room and just sat down quietly, fuming on his own.
Yeah, I mean, he refuses to admit the next bit, but... so anyway, it smashed his stumps over, and we were just sort of meandering along.
I'm fairly sure he also fired Charlie LB as well.
Chaz was out LBW to Sav. Yeah, I mean, they're both out LBW, Bless. So there we go. Our White Knight in you, Bless, got 4. You were caught at mid-off.
Yeah, I hit a 4 through the covers, and then nobody had come to me and say he's bowling a slow ball. Nobody out of the whole innings said he's bowling a slow ball. And he bowled a slow ball that stuck in ground, and he just whacked it straight to mid-on.
I think social media was around at the time. Were you following at any point, Cobus? Or
Yes, I was. I was
Yeah.
definitely following the whole game. Yeah, we were waiting for tweets and guys, Frank and a couple of other guys on the committee were taking quite some time out of it to make us follow the game well, which was quite interesting to see.
yeah,
I mean, it was a really tense game. I mean, we still had another 2 games, Blaise, after that,
Yeah.
that we could have.
Another 2 games, yeah.
So we were getting closer and closer. So we knew that we'd win the league, but it was a really tense game because you just wanted to do it then. I remember talking to Paul Stanley about it and saying, "Stanley, I'm really nervous. This is a disaster. What's happening? I'm going to have to bat." And he went, "Well, it's all right. We've got another game next week. It's fine." And he was fine about it.
Yeah.
Whereas I was absolutely petrified. I then go into bat with Matt Walker. I think I faced maybe 30 balls. I got 3 runs, Blaise.
Yeah.
Those 3 runs came in the last 2 balls of my innings. Maz just kept whacking it. It kept hitting it straight, hitting it over extra cover.
I think he kept whacking Paul Junior Senior all over the place.
It did keep whacking Paul Junior Senior. You're right, Peter, he did. And he
got out, didn't he?
He got out, yeah. Because we were talking. At that point, we needed maybe, I don't know, 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, we needed 10. And the over before he's out, we were talking and saying, "Maz, if you just keep batting, I'll stay with you. And then I'll try and get a single and you can get on." But he decided that probably wasn't going to work. So he tried to hit it and unfortunately hit it straight up. But he played absolutely fantastically well. Got 60, 65 and batted brilliantly. So me and Ferg came in and
nudged it and nurled it around.
Yeah, we did.
Had Kelly Smuts bowled out by then?
No, I faced an over of Kelly Smuts, which I blocked. Which they kept saying, "You can't block it at this stage," and that was the only thing I was ever. I think I had my bat in front of my pad before I started.
Yes, I can, and I will.
So did I, Joe, but it didn't make a difference.
And we just sort of crept over the line, and we actually got to the point. I managed to hit a sweep off Sav that went for 2, that got us over the line to get the 7 points that we needed to win the league, and Ferg hit him back over his head for a 4 to win the league. Yeah. Which we had another slightly slower pitch invasion from the one 3 years previous players. But just an amazing win in what we should have, I would argue we were the best team that year anyway. Just looking at the stats in general, Blaise, when I said at the start this was when the team was operating at its best, I would say, and I think the stats actually back that up because it was an all-round sort of team effort. When I look at the batting stats, Blaise, you got 300 runs, Chaz got 200 odd runs, Finchy got 350 runs, Hawkey got nearly 500 runs, Ben got 500 runs, Cobus got nearly 500 runs, Matt Walker got nearly 400 runs, and Johnny got 400 runs.
It's one of those seasons, weren't it, where you look at it statistically and you see some seasons when people have got 700 runs, 600 runs, 800 runs, things like that, and you think, that's not a great season for the batting, one with 500, but when you talk about the scores that we were bowling sides out for, you're never going to get those people getting 800 runs, 600 runs, because we just didn't need it. We didn't, we weren't chasing those scores because, we were putting sides in a lot and bowling them out cheaply.
It seemed that all we really needed was 1 score a game, and either Finchy, Johnny, Ben or Cobus would get that.
Yeah.
And then the odd time it didn't happen, we had Charlie and Blaise and Hawkey who were performing really well with quick 30s, 40s.
Yeah,
so it all gelled together quite nicely, really, with the bat, I think.
And even more so with the ball. The partnerships that people bowled in were fantastic. I mean, Cobus took 68 wickets, Matt Walker took 42 wickets, PU took 32 wickets, Hawkey took 34 wickets, Finch took 22 wickets, and Ferg took 17 wickets. I mean, Ferg barely bowled that year, actually, relative to the other people. It's a bit harsh saying everybody chipped in, but because everybody's performances were at such a high level. But it was just an all-round great team, I would say. Man for man, everybody knew the job and knew what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Right.
We're going on to the next game.
Next game against Aki.
You remember that one, Joe? Can you remember somebody didn't play?
You, Blaise.
Blaise, why didn't you play?
He fell in lake.
No.
We were going to save that
Bless.
point for another one.
Lindsay was doing the Lake Windermere 10.5 mile swim that day. So
Coast Guard had to be called out.
so we were up in the lakes. We'd stayed up on Friday night at Candice's house. The swim started at 6:30. So we stayed there, got up at 5, got down to the bottom of Lake Windermere. She started off, we'd watched it. Then we went round to Candice's boathouse to meet her halfway, and then I fell over on the slipway, did my ankle, completely shot and sprained my ankle, fell over, my phone fell into the lake.
Still there, you can still ring it.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember, I think, obviously I was missing that game. I can't remember why. I think I were injured. But
no, I think you were banned.
I remember being there. And I asked him, where's Bled? Oh, he's fallen in the lake.
He's fallen in the lake. You can just imagine him with like a water ring on and armbands being pulled in.
Coast Guard having to pull him in.
So Lindsay was due to finish about 11 o'clock. So it was going to be a bit of a rush to get there, but we'd won the league, so it weren't a problem. So brother-in-law was going to drive me down from the lakes because Lindsay obviously was going to stay up there. So at the end of the swim, she'd done 10.5 miles, first lady home, and I missed her coming in because I couldn't walk round the corner to see her finish. So she'd come out, she was sat down by the time I got round. So I think it was about that time I realised that I weren't available to play. So I rang up and said,
I'll make it.
I didn't realise that, Bless, because I thought you'd floated to the finish line on just some driftwood.
He came 24th in the end.
So then I came back to the club and just sat and had a few beers on side. I did a John Terrier for the presentation.
What?
So did I.
I've forgotten that. I was thinking whilst we were telling it, I thought, well, if he didn't play, where did he?
That was my second John Terry.
How did he get his? How did he get his prize? You obviously put your whites on.
Exactly.
Oh, fantastic!
And it got even better, didn't it? The last game of the season, Paddy came on the train on the Ramsbottom Express, didn't he?
On booze train.
On train, yeah.
On booze
Orange
train.
juice train. On orange train.
Frank Kenty brought me some cans of Vimto.
They decided, you know, that you played at Ramsbottom after that, didn't you? And
Yeah.
they've got the railway line right next to it, behind Ramsbottom. So there's like a proper steam train that goes on that railway, but it goes from Bury. So the supporters got a bus to Bury, and then got the train back to Ramsbottom. Arrived on the steam train.
I mean, there was some of the. Oh God, I've forgotten all about them.
And how many we were out? How many LBWs did we have that day?
I think there was 6.
6 LBWs. We got fired out. Mark Eggleston got surrounded by the chairman and a few others in his dressing room, didn't they?
Yeah.
Renners, it's absolutely fantastic. The umpire.
Simon, who could bowl a seed, got 6 wickets, didn't he? All LB.
Yeah. He got me out LBW. I think mine were out though. The umpire called Renners and Matt Stanley into the dressing room after because our fans had been berating the umpire so much so, you know, it was
quite abusive.
Yeah, it was extremely abusive, bless. To which he said to Renners, he went, "So what do you think about that, Renners?" He went, "Well, it's pretty clear, Mark, that you've got a problem with us."
and I agree with them.
and then they asked him to leave. That's Danny says that.
He got asked into the umpire's room and then sent out.
He got sent out within 2 minutes.
I think there's only me. There's only me that's happened to.
Oh.
Cobus, do you want to add anything on Renners?
Yeah, no, he's a great bloke. I think he's instrumental in the club's success over the years. What I've come to terms with is he was quite instrumental in setting up the youth structure at the club and was quite good for the regional building phases of getting youth cricket strong. and obviously he was passionate about cricket. I remember him every Saturday walking around the field and watching us and steering us on. And it was very important for him, for us to do well. And I think a lot of the youngsters like yourself, Paddy, you, Joe, Matt Walker, Fergus, the Bailey brothers, all the guys coming through the system, he was very proud of them because I think he felt he treated him like his own son at the time and in the developmental phases, which was brilliant.
I don't think I can add anything to that, Cobus. That was spot on. Blaise, do you have anything to add about that season?
No, I think I've gone through most of the tales, finishing with me hobbling to the presentation. No, it was a fantastic season. One of the more sort of enjoyable seasons because in a lot of the times we were just sat back wondering, how well we'd played in that sort of second half of the season, thinking, wow, it's another game finished by 5:30, 6 o'clock. That's unbelievable. As Cobus always says, a short game is a good game.
Feet up time. Was feet up time the year before or was it 2014 or was it the year after feet up time?
I can't remember, but it was Tot Modern 2020 competition and the bank holiday wasn't scheduled.
So we've got a...
Wasn't in Cobus's calendar.
No, we've got a...
wasn't printed in.
We've got a T20 tournament. Charlie said, so we've got a T20 tournament on Bank Holiday Monday that we're all going to play in. Cobus looked absolutely distraught by this because we play double header weekend. Then we were playing on Bank Holiday Monday.
Quite possible we played Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
There's every chance. I mean, I didn't play in the tournament because I had exams on the Tuesday, but I played the weekend. So Cobus looked perplexed by what was happening, and he just started shaking his head and folded his arms. He said, "No, feet up time." I do think you played in that though. God, there was no feet up time.
Yeah, he did. He bowled off spin.
Fantastic. Right, P, do you have anything to add about that season?
Yeah, a very strong season. I just think ultimately it'd be one of falling short, to put a bit of a dampener on it, unfortunately, because if you get to a final and a semi-final we should win, you can't help but be a touch disappointed. Yeah, so I think that's probably how I'd have a look at it, but league-wise, you can't argue with how fantastic it was.
I think we're all disappointed by the fact that we didn't win the 2020 and the Worsley Cup. The 2020 is a lottery, isn't it? So anything can happen on that day. But the Cup semi-final was a game we really should have won. We're in a position to win and just didn't see it home, unfortunately. Yeah.
Speaking of somebody who hadn't won anything for 20 years before we won something, I think you're being a little bit greedy, Pete.
I mean, it may be that I'm being a touch selfish there, Blaise, because I didn't play in 2012.
I'd have settled being in the semi-final for 20 years before that. So getting to the second last ball in a semi-final and still being in with a chance, that would have been a glorious season.
I just have one question. Cobus, do you have anything to add on A, the season, and B, the club?
Hey, this season, I think looking back, I remember a while ago, Lowerhouse on the Twitter feed asked which side was the best side ever at the club, and I think the 2014 side came through as quite strong, and I think we said that from the start. So the lifelong friendships there is brilliant for me. And then a question towards the club, and that's just a question I don't need an answer now. The amount of players that goes through the Lowerhouse system from a young age, from under 9 up to under 18. I would really like to see more first-class cricketers come out of Lowerhouse. I think that's a challenge, and I haven't got the answers for that. But that needs to be a drive for the club to make sure that you guys create first-class cricketers to go on and to play county cricket and become professionals. I think that's the club sort of needs that now. I think that's where the club has grown into, and that will be a good challenge for you guys. Thanks a lot for hosting us, Joe. I think you did a great job.
I'd rather had Jez, Joe.